So today's the fourth day, and still have some energy for exercises, or exhausted? Yeah. I haven't exhausted the exercises, so at least I feel I should explain further anyway. And as I mentioned, if you have the energy, be a good opportunity to try to follow the instructions and see what the result is. And at least if it's a little bit too much for you, then at least you are aware of this particular exercise, that maybe later in your practice you may return to it. So this exercise, the next one is in this giving instructions about the establishment of mindfulness. The next one is called CittāNupassanā, developing awareness with regard to the contents of the mind, states of mind, conditions of mind. And this is probably not entirely new to you, because you've probably been to some degree observing the state of your mind. I mean, I mentioned about, just being able to focus attention. You need to be aware of whether the mind is on the breathing or off the breathing, and being able to be aware of if the mind is calm enough or not. But in this exercise, it's a kind of a conscious effort to bring attention to, awareness to the contents of the mind. And ideally, this is where you could say this is where the exercise we've done already really begin to pay off. And we're trying to be aware of the states of mind. Of course, it's easy to get pulled into them. The mind watching the mind. What mind watching what mind. But if you've developed this ability to observe, this quality of awareness, mindfulness, sati, this can be a very powerful tool. And ideally, with developing it, supported by calm, of course, the mind is calmed down to some degree, not calmed into oblivion or unconsciousness, so that some of the reactiveness is calmed down. Maybe you'll be able to experience a non-judgmental, non-reactive awareness to some degree. At least it's possible anyway. We'll find out soon enough. Most people haven't developed that ability, haven't developed mindfulness very much, and so they're mindful of an impression, and then the mind leaps into interpreting, evaluating, judging, trying to figure out how to control it, how to do with it, blah, 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 blah. And then, what was that first impression anyway? Long down the track, after you build all the mental sandcastles in the air, what was the first impression anyway? But if you've been able to experience some degree of calmness of mind, the tendency to go into all this interpretation and all that has been quietened down, calmed down, at least temporarily. And the mind is able to focus on, these particular areas of awareness I mentioned, the sensations, the feeling tones, and now the conditions of mind. And it's a little bit hard to talk about conditions of mind because, where is the boundary? We say a state of mind, but when do you cross the state boundary? It's more like, what is the most predominant condition of the mind at this time? What's the most prominent content of the mind right now? The mind can be at different levels of consciousness, have different contents. And it's quickly changing. You may notice, you'll notice shortly if you haven't noticed already. But just to be able to be aware of the main or predominant content of the mind. And then maybe if you develop this exercise further, you might be able to expand that to the details. See more and more subtle details of the conditions of mind. When you start to look at it, boy, there's a lot there. There's a lot of unconscious material you aren't conscious of. But you start off with the predominant content of the mind first. So, in this exercise, we still have the basis of focusing on the breathing, to maintain that as a point of reference. And if you do find yourself being pulled into interpreting or judging your state of mind, just go back to the breathing. Otherwise, you're just interpreting, which is not really insight, not very insightful. And maybe it actually can be detrimental because it just increases your habit of interpretation again. You just keep increasing that habit of interpreting and analyzing whatever and not developing this ability to just observe what's actually there. Safer to be with the breathing and be clear about the breathing, settle upon the breathing. So we begin by once again taking up a reasonably comfortable sitting position. And once again, first of all, checking in with the body. What's the predominant sensations at this time? See people have their blankets on, so probably one of the most predominant sensations is coolness. And it's not a joke, even though it is April Fool's. But so just try to tune into the sensations in the body at this time. What's the physical sensations that we are experiencing right now? And if you develop this exercise, probably you have a more refined range of experience of it. It's not just warm or cool. It's not just heavy or light. It's not just compacted or spacious, or relaxed or tense. Maybe you notice something else. Then taking up the sensation of natural breathing once again as a main focus of attention. And noticing how we connect with that sensation of natural breathing. It's helpful to, of course, when we develop it, it's helpful to be able to connect with it reasonably normally, reasonably quickly, reasonably familiarly. That it's close at hand, especially when it comes to observing the states of mind. For most people, we have a lot of identification with our mental activity, a lot of old habits of conceptualizing and mentalizing our experience. So, and then you can also, be helpful if you bring in the exercise yesterday sometimes. What's the feeling tone at this time? Predominant feeling tone. The body sitting here. What's the general sensation of the body? What's the general feeling tone? And as I mentioned, it's if the general feeling tone is a little bit, at least on the positive side, a pleasant feeling tone, this supports calmness of mind, settledness of mind. And if you notice, there is a predominance of unpleasant feeling tone in the body. Generally, this can be distracting to focusing attention. Your mind is more concerned with how to get away from the unpleasant feeling tone. Maybe if you bring in an attitude of a bit more friendliness towards it, rather than struggle against it, it may shift your relationship to it. Especially if we've investigated feeling tones, we know that they are impermanent, they do change. Even if it is unpleasant, well, it's not there forever, it's not an ultimate reality. So first of all, and you can also add to this, checking in with the body, checking in with the mind. So what's the general condition of the mind at this time? Is it generally reasonably calm, first of all? Or is it obviously quite active and busy? So in a way, this gives us some direction for the practice. If your mind is reasonably calm, you don't need to keep developing calm. It's calm enough, perhaps. If the mind is obviously very, very busy and chattering away, well, it's probably a better idea just to keep with the breathing for now, following the sensation of natural breathing, which is could be supportive of calming down the mind. So, ideally, we experience the mind as being calm enough, so you can expand the awareness, other sensations, feeling tones, and then there's this particular exercise. What's the content of the mind? What's the predominant state of the mind or experience in the mind right now? And the Buddha gave a suggestive list of 16. I don't think that, personally, there's not just only 16 different states of mind. I noticed 16,000 or 16 million. But we gave these kind of general suggestions. And the first ones are to observe if the mind content of the mind is predominantly with greed. Greed, longing, wanting. You're wanting to have a clear mind, for example, or a quiet mind. Or is there obviously a lack of longing, wanting, greed in the mind? Is there a predominance of hatred, aversion, resistance, dislike in the mind? Or is it obviously no? Aversion, pushing away, resistance, dislike. Everything's okay, fine. Is there a predominance of what we call delusion, which manifests as confusion, doubt, uncertainty, cloudiness of mind? Or is there always lack of it? The mind is reasonably quiet and clear. Back to the breathing again. Then if you're unclear about say the state of the mind, condition of mind, you can always cross-reference it to say the breathing. If there is some obvious disturbance of mind, it'll affect your breathing. If your breathing is reasonably calm and reasonably smooth, that's probably an indication that the mind is reasonably calm too. Or if there's a particular pattern to the breathing sharp and strongly, it's usually a sign that there's some strong emotional content of the mind, usually negative content. So what is that? Open the awareness. Try to focus in on it, if you like. Is it greed? Is it aversion? Is it delusion, say? Then back to the breathing again, see. Particularly if you find your mind judging or questioning, is it this or is it that? I wonder if it's this. I think it's this. It might be that. Let's go back to the breathing. You don't need to think about the breathing. The breathing just happens. Inhalation, exhalation. Very simple. Or sometimes you can cross-reference it with other sensations in the body. I mentioned with that exercise in body sweeping, bringing your attention to the very center of the chest. Heavy-hearted. There's a you can look at it as a sensation, heaviness in the heart. But what's the mental, emotional association with that? Heavy-hearted, light-hearted, warm-hearted, cold-hearted, etc. You can you can look at it more as a physical sensation, or you can try to open it up as a state of mind. Is heavy-hearted as a sensation? What is that as a condition of mind? Is it greed? Is it aversion? Is it delusion? So you can use the conceptual mind to, bring up these particular suggestions, as it were. But rather than continue with conceptualizing maybe this and maybe that, go to the direct experience. Allow that to answer for you. Oh, this is what the physical and mental experience of greed is. Being drawn out. Reaching out, being pulled away, wanting, longing, whatever. Sometimes having a word for it can be helpful. Other times trying to put it into words doesn't work. You have to stay with the feeling about it, the sense of it. Opening up from a state of don't know yet, but I'll look closer. I haven't got it all figured out yet, but I'll look more closely at it. And back to the breathing again. And we also, can modulate the degree of calm. If your mind is very calm, of course, there's no content except calm. But what if you let go of the breathing? Just allow the mind to express itself without holding on to an object. Where does the mind go? Or sometimes if the mind's not calm enough, and not enough basis, foundation for clarity there. You just recognize, you just acknowledge, oh, chattering mind. Yeah. Okay, chattering mind, but what's it chattering about? You can try to observe what the general content of that chattering is. Is it about the past? Kind of reliving memories of the past or plans for the future? Is it just daydreaming, fantasizing? Back to the breathing again. And you can sharpen the awareness on the breathing, looking more closely at the very beginning of the inhalation, following it through to the end of the inhalation, looking at the very beginning of the exhalation, following it through to the end of the exhalation. Just observing different degrees of calm, levels of calm. That's what the content of mind is. Is it a heavy calm, a light calm? Is it a kind of well-established, grounded calm, a bit spacey calm? If your predominant state of mind is calm, well, you can look at the details of it. Ideally, we're observing it without judging, evaluating, discussing, interpreting. Trying to be more clear about, it seems to be calm. Look more carefully. And then cross-referencing with the body, with the breathing. This mind seems to be calm. Is the body calm? Is the breathing calm? And what's the feeling tone with that? It seems to be calm, but there is a noticeable unpleasant feeling tone associated with it. Maybe it's a artificial calm. It's a calm of suppression. And of course, there are various levels of mental content. If there's some mental activity, what is that mental activity? Or there's more of a, which I personally relate it to the weather. You take a weather check. So there is the passing weather patterns, then there is the climate. Is the mind generally quite expansive, or is it contracted? Is it energized and uplifted, or is it kind of depleted? Is the mind reasonably lucid and clear, or cloudy and dull? there does seem to be a predominant content of the mind, especially if it's maybe on the so-called negative side. Sometimes it can be helpful to bring in this practice of friendliness, try to be a little bit more friendly, open, receptive to it, so you can look more closely at it. If you do notice a persisting condition of mind, then I mentioned yesterday the development of increased mindfulness, try to expand it around, further around that particular experience, causal conditions, what's feeding it, nurturing it, what the passing away factors. What changes it, what disturbs it, what keeps it going, what allows it to cease. Again, we're trying to observe. You can use that template to point your mind in that direction, but you allow the experience to resolve it, to answer it. Not going into, I think this is the cause of it. I think if I do this, then it'll go away. Look directly at it. And many times once you become more clear what the real experience is, the answer's there. And it's this, aha, now I can see the pattern there. observing the conditions of mind, getting more experience with the contents of the mind, how the mind works. Maybe begin to notice certain patterns of mental content. You can say maybe there's the ones which are quite positive, ones which brighten the mind, lighten the mind, expand the mind, settle the mind. And there's those which are, you can say, more negative, distract the mind, disturb the mind, weaken the mind, whatever. There's the positive ones, and then there's these negative ones. First of all, we're just observing. They come up sometimes out of the blue. For example, sleepiness. Sometimes there's just, it comes over us. Yeah? Notice, that's not a very helpful state of mind to dwell in, to encourage, to cultivate. It's actually called one of the hindrances. But first of all, we observe what they are, become familiar with them, and maybe we can expand that to, what's the causes of that, and what allows it to pass away. This is learning to read the mind. Mind has its own particular characteristics, its own temperament. Each one of us is different. There's also a commonality there too. There's beneficial qualities like calm, like clarity. There's ones which are not so beneficial, like sleepiness and dullness. We see the cause and the effect relationships with them. So we gain more wisdom or understanding of the nature of the mind. So bringing attention back to the body, sitting here once again. Checking in with the condition of body. And then with that condition of body, what's the predominant condition of mind right now? Mind is reasonably calm or active and busy. Mind is reasonably spacious, clear, or dull and sleepy after the all-night midnight sitting. Just learning to check in ideally before the interpretation comes in. Oh, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. This is good, this is bad. Progress, degress, whatever. Just observing. Then you can relax the posture and open the eyes.